Call of Duty Black Ops is remembered for a lot of things. The campaign is fun, with an engaging story and interesting characters. The multiplayer was great, but was about as balanced as a broken seesaw. And lastly, the zombies mode. In my opinion, zombies never got better past this point. Yes, new things were added and things were made more complex, but in terms of just fun factor and just overall approachability, this game takes the cake. Map design's perfect, the weapons are great, the perks are awesome. It's more than World at War, but just enough to the point where it doesn't become overbearing like future titles would. Outside of custom zombies, this is the thing that I reach for every time. I actually had this game as a kid, but I wasn't lucky like any of the kids that played it on the PS3 or the 360, or God forbid, my one friend who had a PC when he was like 8. I played it on the Wii. And I can tell you, as someone who played this on the Wii, that is not a life worth living. So, now I have the PC version through Plutonium, because I am not paying $40 for a game that in terms of age should be in the 7th grade. Seriously, Activision, you're charging $40 for this game now? It's been 12 years. Regardless, in my opinion, this is the point of no return, because after this, the complexity and approachability to the mode just began to go downhill exponentially, becoming progressively more obtuse and complex, allowing new players no wiggle room. This game balances those two perfectly and is why I love it so much. The overall gameplay loop is largely the same. Get your guns, turn on the power, get your perks, pack a punch, etc. The guns themselves are Cold War era weapons fitting with the game's setting, and they can provide for some differences in gameplay feel and pace. Some weapons like the Galil are really fun, and then there's the Dragunov, which is absolutely fucking terrible. Overall, I like this game's guns, and we will go into more detail about them later on. The zombies themselves have largely stayed the same, except they move slightly faster and can occasionally double hit you. Which basically means you die in one hit, but hey, if you have Juggernog like you should be fine. The Nova Crawlers are a special zombie featured in Kino, 5, and Moon, and unless you kill them through melee, they explode and violate the Geneva Convention section on chemical weapons and leave a toxic gas cloud. This can be annoying in groups, but can be easily circumvented through smart movement. On 5, there's the Pentagon Thief. He's a little shit that looks like a Half-Life scientist, and he will run around and steal your gun, meaning you have to reenact a Scooby-Doo chase scene to get your shit back. If you kill him, he drops a power-up, allowing you to pack a punch your guns for half the price, which I think is pretty neat. The Hellhounds return on some maps and works exactly as they do in the other maps, so that's pretty cool, I guess. Bad doggy, go die. In Ascension, they have these space monkeys, and they steal your perks. I usually like monkeys because they're cute and cuddly and adorable.
Monkey.
And I fucking hate these ones. It's an interesting idea, but when playing in solo, you just end up buying only Juggernog and Quick Revive, and just camp the perk machine and hope to God you don't lose either. It's an interesting idea, and it does change the gameplay up, despite that annoyance, but honestly, I'd rather they just would have made like that one Zoo did and give them water guns. Next up is a bit of a weird one. George Romero. Yes, that George Romero. He's technically a boss enemy in Call of the Dead, but I'd rather just call him an environmental hazard since essentially that's what he is. He's basically harmless. He'll just follow you around, but if you accidentally get him caught in a grenade explosion or a stray bullet hits him or whatever, he will Hulk out and charge at you like the Kool-Aid Man hopped up on whatever the hell Walter White's cooking up. You have to lure him into the water to calm him down, and if you kill him, he will drop a death machine or the Wonder Waff if you did the Easter egg. He's the only special enemy on the map, and honestly, it's kinda cool. Considering the fact that I love George Romero's work, it's just a nice send-off for the man, because he died a few years after this game was released, and honestly, I feel like that making him a zombie in something is probably the perfect way to send him off, so rest in peace, George. In Shangri-La, there are technically 3 new zombie types. I say technically 3 because one really isn't a zombie. The Napalm Zombie, the Shrieker, and the fucking monkeys again! The monkeys don't steal your perks this time around, but if a zombie happens to drop a power-up, the monkey will come and try to steal it, which means you have to chase it the fuck around and stomp on the thing to get your max ammo back. Napalm Zombie deals damage to you when you're nearby it and will explode on death, killing zombies, but also you if you're too close. It's not as dangerous in open spaces and can be actually kinda helpful with dealing with large crowds of zombies, but in close quarters, you better make like a tree and run in the opposite fucking direction. The Shrieker is the complete opposite. They'll shriek at you, distorting your vision, and sprint at you extremely quickly. And if you're not paying attention, these things will put you in the ground real quick. Moon doesn't really have any major alterations to the gameplay, just more of a twist. Nova Crawlers come back, along with the Hellhounds at Area 51, but you're barely going to be there. You have to wear a space suit, because space. You have an optional hacking device, which can help keep certain weapons around, is more relevant to the Easter egg than anything else. But there's one new enemy added, the Astronaut. And he will just make like Barney and give you a big-ass bear hug and steal your perks, because you can't have nice things in space with zombies. You get bent. New perks were added, and a lot of them became mainstays of the mode. Stamina Up, Deadshot Daiquiri, Mule Kick, and PhD Flopper, bringing the total count to 8 in this game. They largely complement the first 4 rather well. Stamina Up gives you the effects of Lightweight and Marathon. PhD makes you immune to explosions and gives you an explosive dolphin dive. Mule Kick lets you carry 3 guns. That's pretty neat. The only one out of the 4 that isn't useful is Deadshot Daiquiri, because all it does is make the hipfire crosshair smaller, which is more useful on console due to its headshot auto-aim, but on PC, due to the fact that I play with a mouse and keyboard, like a sane person, it's basically useless. Quick Revive was given its effects in solo in this game, meaning that it has a use instead of just dumping points down the drain, which is nice. Now that major gameplay changes are discussed, let's jump into the maps. Remember when I said that gameplay is largely dependent on the map design as a result of the enemy design and how they actually work? We'll get to that now. Some maps, like Kino der Toten, are your standard zombies fare. They're not super close quarters, but it has some open spaces. This makes the map feel more relaxed in terms of play, providing a more casual experience. By contrast, a map like Shangri-La is much more close quarters and claustrophobic, with less areas to run around in, and special enemies that in tight areas are a death sentence. Call of the Dead and Ascension are the opposite, with a large amount of open spaces to safely traverse around zombies. Moon is a decent mix of all of these styles, with large areas like the pyramid, soul capture thing, and the dome, and the claustrophobic tunnels, as well as the spawn room and Area 51, being a decent mix of large and small spaces. Vive, by contrast, is probably the most close quarters of the maps, consisting in mostly of hallways and small rooms, and the only real space being the war room downstairs after all the barricades are torn down. All of the maps themselves have a consistent tone and aesthetic. As the game was released in the era of the saturated colors being an artistic choice, the most vibrant color in the game, and the maps as a whole, is going to be the color red due to zombie blood. And the green if you count the crawlers, but that's besides the point. Some maps, like Shangri-La, Call of the Dead, and 5, have distinct visual styles and color palettes, with 5's dark and sinister atmosphere being very different from the lush and decently colorful jungles of Shangri-La. The visual tone is consistent with the game's campaign in terms of tone, and I actually like that it remains semi-grounded and serious versus the more fantastical zombies experiences we would get going forward. Overall, these maps are pretty simplistic, with some complexity as the maps progress, and for the most part are not too complex to the point where it's impossible to understand for a first-time player, unless you're talking about Moon, which can be a bit of a pain for someone who's never played zombies before, or even experienced players for that matter. They provide good gameplay in a variety of playstyles, with Kino der Toten probably being the easiest map, and Moon or Shangri-La easily being the hardest. But most maps have options for running and gunning, or camping, and overall it's a good balance. And these maps are my favorites in the series, and are usually my go-to when I'm just looking to play some zombies for fun. Now, the guns in the game themselves are Cold War era, and they're pretty fun to use. So as a result of this, instead of getting your granddad's M1 Garand, you get a Colt Commando or Spaz 12. Weapons generally feel pretty good, but there are a few duds. The HS-10 is pretty bad, and every sniper rifle can get thrown into the same pit that Rogel Dorn is hiding in.
Dorn's colossal chain blade.
Standout weapons include the crossbow for its fun factor, just because of the fact it's fun to stick a zombie, basically essentially with a stick of dynamite. Fuck you, I can do that. The Commando and Galil are powerhouse weapons that will basically be the things you'll primarily be fishing for when you're using the mystery blocks. The really fun part here are the wonder weapons. The ray gun returns, and it's great.
It's an old reliable and especially fun with the PhD flopper and speed cola. Corner camping with no explosive damage inflicting on the player is absolutely disgusting. And I love it. There are some fun guns here as well. The Zap guns have 2 firing modes. One that acts like a Wunderwaffe without the chain, and the other is an Activision endorsement of every Sonic fan's inflation fetish. The Shrink Ray, I'm not saying that, acts like a shrinker in Duke 3D. You can just walk into the zombies and kick them away, killing them. VR11 is bad. It can pacify George, but it doesn't kill zombies, and it just turns someone into a CIA agent distracting zombies. It's better in co-op when you have to, use it to distract zombies to revive a downed ally, but other than that, it's basically useless, except for the Easter egg in any capacity. Scavenger is amazing. It's basically just souped up crossbow, and it's just really fun to use. It can also kill George pretty easily, making it particularly useful.
Don't even get me started on the actual piece of dog shit wonder weapon that's the fucking winner's howl. Listen, if this is supposed to be Mr. Freeze's freeze ray, then I'm sorry, he's the worst Batman villain. This thing is terrible. This thing is not really all that hard to get. It's hard to get pack-a-punched, but it's not that hard to get. It's available on Verrucht and 5. But that's not the problem here. The problem is the fucking Pentagon thief. Because you have to chase him around because he steals your fucking stuff, like I said before. But the issue that I have is that because of the fact that 5 is not the easiest map for newer players, and while I love it, this weapon sucks! It's not worth what the hoops you have to jump through to fucking make it work! This thing stops being useful after round 15, and you might as well use any other weapon in order of replacement of it. The ray gun's better than this fucking thing! Everything else is better! The VR11 loses by default because it's not an actual weapon! Such a piece of shit!
However, the best out of all of them is easily the Thunder Gun. It's probably my favorite wonder weapon in zombies, period. It just shoots a gust of compressed air that flings zombies back. And it's basically just the weapon equivalent of a panic button. The Pack-a-Punch variants of all of these weapons are pretty good. The Thunder Gun, Scavenger, Shrink Ray, and Ray Gun all become fantastic, and everything else stays kinda mid. There is another category of wonder weapons, however, that being certain types of grenades. Monkey bombs return and work the same as they did the last time. Not much else to say, it's just nice to have them back. First introduces the Matryoshka dolls, which are basically just cluster bombs in the form of Russian Matryoshka dolls. But they're really fun when camping in a corner with PhD because it's basically a get out of jail free card. Pay that with the ray gun and the thunder gun, become little more than a zombie killing sewer troll because that's the best way to play this game. The next is the Gersh device, which is basically a black hole grenade. It sucks zombies into it, and if you walk through it, it can teleport you anywhere throughout the map. It's pretty neat, and honestly I can enjoy using it whenever it pops up on a mystery box. The QED is weird. It's essentially the zombies equivalent of the D20 grenade in Cursed Halo, minus a Thanos. It can give you points, produce an electric shock that kills zombies, spawn power-ups, spawn another astronaut, or give you more zombies. It's a complete clusterfuck. Honestly, I really like it, but it can fuck you over pretty easily if you're using it wrong. And that's basically it. It really improves on what World at War did, and overall, I really enjoyed it. It was very, very fun, and I hope you all enjoyed the video. Have a good...
Wait, no. You're forgetting something.
Razur, I really don't want to talk about the plot.
You've been dancing around making this for 3 years. You don't get to not talk about the plot.
It's my video. I'm not doing it.
I don't care if you don't want to. You don't just talk about Black Ops and not talk about the plot.
The overall zombies storyline and timeline is insane. In this game, it's relatively straightforward and easy to understand compared to the later games in the series, and even then it can still be kind of obtuse to fully understand, but past this point, it's a cluster from hell, with hidden cutscenes, alternate timelines, time travel, multiple versions of the same characters, aliens, ancient wars, it's kind of insane, and past Black Ops 2, honestly, it's just completely lost me. So, Black Ops 1 is still pretty weird, but it's comparatively less weird, because it doesn't have all the weird other stuff, but it's still pretty strange. So your main characters, right? You're Dempsey, you're Takio, you're Nikolai, you're Richtofen. And Richtofen's not taking his medication, and he's part of a group called Group 935, so if you've ever seen Raiders of the Lost Ark, the evil Nazi scientist shit, just imagine that, but weirder. So they get this element, right, from this meteor, it's called 115, and they make things like the Wunderwaffe, and the ray gun, and the teleporters, and then a Nazi moon base, and then zombies by accident. Yay. And then they use these teleporters that they made to travel around the world and through time with various other adventures to grab a bunch of other shit so they can get to Richtofen's 100% historically accurate Nazi moon base so we can get to this little pyramid. But there's a little girl in the pyramid, and he trades souls with a little girl in the pyramid so that way he can control the zombies because that's the person in the pyramid controls the zombies. So now what you have
is a 40-year-old Nazi man possessing the body of a girl, and then the girl possessing the fucking Nazi man, and then he decides, fuck you, Earth, so he decides to nuke the planet. So then you're left with 3 dudes on the moon, a dude that's really a little girl that's really an old dude, and in fairness, it's a pretty simple story, with the typical tropes of weird science, World War II, Nazi experiments, science fiction, and all the good elements for a decently enjoyable action story. To me, it tickles the same itch that things like Evil Dead do, and I really enjoy that. The thing is that the way the story is conveyed is such an ass-backwards way of doing it. And how the hell people even find this stuff, the Easter egg steps, is beyond me, because all the maps, beyond them being just fun, just serve as, hey, go here to find X thing for Y device, and whether it's a weird rock or a golden rod or an excuse to see some cool stuff, none of this is all conveyed to the player directly. It has to be searched for, and while back in the day this may have had a mysterious air and spookiness to it, in practice, it's just kind of distracting, to be brutally honest. In a weird way, it reminds me of early Five Nights at Freddy's. I have a point here, I promise. Both conveyed their lore in very cryptic, obtuse ways before going balls out and dumping everything on everyone and going absolutely insane. After things went insane, the series deteriorated, leaving the fan base not particularly happy. What I'm really trying to say here is the Hellhound who did the Bite of 87. Speaking of the Easter eggs, they're actually semi-challenging, depending on the map. Ascension's not too bad. Call of the Dead's pretty fun. Shangri-La can be a bit of a pain in the ass, but that's more based on the fact that if you're playing with randoms, it's annoying, and if you're playing with people that you know, it's fine, and if you're playing by yourself, it's also fine. The main thing here is Moon. Some of the steps are completely RNG based, which means it's luck. An excavator needs to create an opening in a certain tunnel, for example. When that happens, it's completely random. It can happen at round 6, 25, or 50. It's completely fucking irritating, and when doing the Easter egg for this video, it was painfully funny. You have to do a Simon Says minigame, which really isn't engaging, and it's honestly just annoying. I don't like the Moon Easter egg, and the payoff was really cool, but it's still a pain in the butt to deal with. Would not recommend. 0 stars. Also, one last thing. Dead Ops Arcade is fun. It's a top-down arcade shooter. It's easily the thing I can play for short sessions between classes of feeling like it. Incredibly fun, and I'm happy they brought it back for Cold War and Black Ops 3. It's a good time. It's fun. I'd recommend it. Go play it. I don't know how to end a segment. Black Ops 1 Zombies is just fun. It's a goofy story, not really the best thing in the world, but it's still fun and entertaining. It doesn't really take itself all that seriously, and it's just a good time. The gameplay itself is perfect, and it's still my favorite Zombies game in the series. And the only one that can really compare is Black Ops 3, more on the gameplay front, less on the map front, although I do just end up playing the Zombies Chronicle stuff when I end up playing that game mostly anyway, and the mods, because that's the best part of the entire game to me. But all of the Black Ops 1 maps, easily 8 out of 10 minimum. Fantastic. It also has a lot of sentimental value to me. I played this game a lot during quarantine, and it got me through some pretty rough times. And even now I go back to it sometimes just for fun, and it makes me happy. So, whether you want to buy it for the exorbitantly expensive price you get it on Steam, or just play it through Plutonium, it's really fun with friends, and it's probably one of the best zombie shooter games outside of Killing Floor or Left 4 Dead 2, and Back 4 Blood doesn't exist. Who actually plays that? Overall, it's a good time. I'd recommend it. Now, to answer the elephant in the room question, this video took so long to make because I had different priorities and different interests, and I just didn't feel like making it until now. I rewrote the script 5 times over the last 3 years. It has just been... my content type enjoyment changed. The Black Ops 2 video, however, is going to happen. I'm going to make sure that it does because I want to do that. I think it'll be a fun video to make, and I'm looking forward to it, and I'm hoping you all get to see it. But my interests and tastes have changed in terms of stuff that I do and content that I enjoy. And some of those things will appear on this channel, so if you're interested, I'd recommend keeping a lookout for that. Thanks for watching. Have a good one. Hope to see you in the next one.